You're listening to Our Space with Matt Vettese.
Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of Our Space with Matt Vettese. Remember, if you love these chats with your favorite artists, go follow and subscribe to the show, depending on where you're listening. Follow or subscribe, but also leaving that review goes a long way towards growing the show as well. Today's guest is one that I am super happy to be on because, well, you've probably seen them at Warped Tour. You'll be seeing them at this year's When We Were Young festival. And you've probably been listening to them for a very, very long time. Welcome, Christian of Anberlin. How's it going, man?
Going quite well, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We were kind of quickly talking before we hit record. You're right in the middle of a very, very long tour schedule.
Yep. Like I said, we've been out. I left Florida June 17th, and we had a 10-day break in between legs. We've been out on this leg for like 2 weeks, I want to say. I'm actually back in Florida right now. We had a few days off, so I flew home just to see my family. So the band's actually in Oklahoma City on a day off, heading to Dallas, which is where our show is on Monday, tomorrow. But yeah, so I'm flying back out tomorrow morning. But so I got to see my wife and kids here for a second.
Do you get to do that fairly often, or?
I haven't, no. I mean, we, like I said, we had the 10-day break in between legs. Luckily, actually, on the first leg, we went through Florida kind of midway through the tour. So we played kind of like Clearwater is very close to where I live. So I was able to bring my family out, go home for a day. We were in the area for multiple days. So it was kind of like a nice little break in the middle. So this has been nice to kind of break it up every couple of weeks, but it's pretty nuts because I have a 10-month-old. And, you know, cumulative on this tour, I'll have been gone for a quarter of how long he's been alive. You know what I mean?
Oh, my goodness.
They change so much when they're just within the first year. So it's just kind of crazy watching him grow up over FaceTime. But that's part of the deal.
Yeah. And I mean, you kind of understand how like touring can be tough. I can only imagine how tough that must be with that extra added change in your life. Congratulations on the kid, by the way.
Thank you so much. And yeah, like you said, I mean, listen, life is tough. Everything has its trade-offs. So, you know, working a 9 to 5, I'm lucky enough in a band, you know, yeah, you might be gone a lot, but when you're home, you're just home, you know, for the most part, and for most individuals. So that might be for months at a time, which most people don't get that opportunity. So as someone that might go to a 9 to 5 or whatever, it's like you only get to see your kids maybe that couple hours after you get home before they go to bed, you know? So it's good and bad. It's just all things in life are trade-offs. So I'm appreciative of being able to do this. But yes, like we were saying, the 3 months straight pretty much is pretty banana long tour. So,
and I think this particular tour seems extra hectic, just, you know, looking at all the dates on my end, mixed in with the festivals, you know, like you're touring, and then you've got all of these festivals coming up as well, like the Is for Lovers Festival, When We Were Young, later on in October. You know, is that a normal thing for you to kind of mix up the festivals with the touring as well?
Yeah, it's just kind of timing and, you know, offers. You just there's a lot of things to take into account. They all kind of work together. So luckily for this tour, you know, sometimes you'll be on a tour, you might need to fly out to another, you know, region of the States where it's just not logistically possible to get the bus there in time. But on this tour, we've luckily just been able to route the bus we've been on to the festivals we've been at. So, you know, it's a nice change of pace, to be honest, because it's almost like Groundhog's Day on the tour. So, you know, the festival days are slightly different. You add in more bands and, you know, more homies that you might not have seen for a minute. So, yeah, I take it either way, to be honest.
How does that change things for you, I guess, like mentally or schedule-wise? Because I imagine you get into some sort of a groove with the tours and then having a festival playing at different time slots and whatnot and longer days, I guess.
Yeah, I think at this point, 22 years in, or however many years we're in, kind of used to it by now, and it's pretty easy to kind of just navigate and roll with any changes. You know, Warped Tour, I think, trained most bands to kind of like operate on their toes because you wouldn't even know what time you were playing until the morning of. So, you know, everyone's TM or whoever, you know, in the band would go to the morning meeting, and that's when they would pass out the schedule. So it's like you could be playing first and, just waking up, rubbing the boogers out of your eyes. And it's like, all right, time to go get on stage, or it's kind of, we're used to just being shuffling around at different times. So if anything, I just look at it like I get to be done earlier in the day. You know what I'm saying?
That's pretty exciting. And I mean, big ones coming up in October with When We Were Young. And you've obviously been on tour and you're friends with a lot of the bands that are going to be on that lineup. And of course, When We Were Young, you're playing and Never Take Friendship Personal in Full.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about being on a lineup like When We Were Young?
We were on it the first year, and it was kind of like, we knew it was maybe like the scale and scope of it hadn't really truly been explained to us by our manager or agent at the time, because I remember when the first year got announced as a post, people were sending me screenshots of it and were like, wait, is this real? Because I'd heard like, like there's this big festival happening in Vegas. It's like, they got some really big artists on it, Mike Cann and Paramore and Bring the Horizon, like just all the who's who of the scene, right? And I was like, yeah, whatever, it sounds great. And so when they actually posted that first flyer, everyone's like, this has got to be a joke, right? And everyone was hitting me up. I was like, no, this is a real show. I remember this confusion for those first few weeks of people like, this can't be real. And how are they going to pull that off? Everyone kept asking me like, how are they going to, there's that many bands on just like 3 stages or whatever the setup was, right? They were just like, I don't understand like how that's going to work. I was like, I don't know. Like maybe a revolving stage, that might work that way, right? That's what it was. But so the bigger festivals like that are always a blast because, you do get to run into and see a lot of bands in genres or styles of music that you just don't normally tour with, right? Like I have a lot of friends in a lot of metal bands. I'm a big metal fan. There's no way to justify Anberlin touring with, As I Lay Dying or something like that, right? It just doesn't make sense. But it's cool in this bigger festivals because they are this just kind of smorgasbord of genres and artists. So those are like good opportunities to kind of see homies you haven't seen in a minute. And it's just a big hang. Warped Tour was the ultimate, punk rock summer camp for sure. So this feels like a throwback a little bit, but you also then mixed in a couple shots of Vegas. So it's just kind of a crazy event for sure.
You kind of mentioned the whole throwback thing, and it kind of almost feels like with festivals like When We Were Young leaning on the nostalgia factor and the emo nights leaning on the nostalgia factor. As an artist, how do you kind of avoid getting caught up in nostalgia so you can keep looking forward as an artist?
I think you can embrace both. It's like you have your legacy of what you've done. Like I said, we've been doing this for 20 odd years. So that's a lot of records, 9. And a lot of times your earlier records are your kind of more defining records, right? It's just the nature of growing up, right? It's like those first artists you found or the first years that you were defining yourself as a individual, and the music that surrounded you at that time is so important to you, probably for the rest of your life. It's not like, I don't know if you ever outgrow it truly. So it makes sense to me that it's coming full circle because it's like you saw those, I call them kids, but we were all probably the same age. It's teenagers and early 20s, and then life kind of happens, and you're now seeing people that are older, maybe have a little more freedom. Maybe the kids are grown up a little more. Maybe they're bringing their kids to the concert. So it is pretty cool to see this resurgence happen because it truly is. Like I have watched it happen because, Anberlin broke up for 5 years and we reformed in 2019. COVID happened, and it seems like post-COVID, there's just been this really big movement of like an emo resurgence. And I've watched my contemporaries and peers kind of just thriving, right? And I love it for them. I'm just like, and we've had this we've been going through this crazy change right now because we haven't been able to tour the past couple of years. And it was just it was gutting me because I was just like going like, whoa, guys, like there's something really big happening. And we need to be a part of that. When you need to be able to say yes to these things while they're happening, emo this festival, emo this festival, emo this cruise, it's like everything's an emo, everything. Right. But I think, so it's like, it's okay to be like, yes, that's where we came from. But I think every band is always trying to grow and adapt, and no one wants to write the same record twice, not usually. And, I can't speak for everyone, but I think it can be both. I think you can acknowledge where you came from and what that impact was on people, and also change and evolve into that, you can watch if you to me if you still step back and listen to every Anberlin album chronologically, it would make sense. You would watch the growth happen before your eyes, right? It would all make sense. They all tie into each other. We never really took like a hard, e-brake turn anywhere on our styles of music. So, yeah, that was a long-winded way to say it can be both.
And talk a little bit about that nostalgia factor, because it sounds like you're all for that nostalgia, and it kind of seems at times that like this emo revival that we're kind of going through right now almost feels like bigger than what it was back then, kind of growing up in the scene. Do you find that it's bigger now and there's this extra wave that makes it more popular? Or was it bigger then and we're just kind of looking back with rose tinted glasses?
I think it is bigger now, to be honest with you, just because I'm so close to so many artists and just, the business in general, right? So, let's use Yellow Card, for example. Like I toured with Yellow Card in my old band Acceptance when they were blowing up on Ocean Avenue, right? And they were massive. Like I'm not diminishing that at all, but Anberlin toured with them last year on the anniversary tour, and it was like, or the reunion tour. Let me apologize. Slash anniversary tour, whatever. It was both, and it was massive. Like they were doing, rooms probably twice the size that they'd ever done. Another good example is one of my good friends works for Blink 182, right? And it's like they're doing numbers that they've never, not even close. You know what I'm saying? Like they just sold out SoFi. They're just like crushing tickets. They're selling more merch than they've ever sold. And it's like, I think it's just a movement. And like I said, I think it's just when people were younger that you didn't have as much ability maybe, or even the fundage to go and do what you wanted to do when you wanted to do it all the time. And I think I can't really put a finger on it. Maybe it's like you have multiple generations now of listeners. You have your old generation, younger generations, all kind of coming together at the same time. So it's been fascinating to watch, but I'm for it.
You bring up a good point, because I remember growing up in that era, and I went to Warped Tour every single year that I was in high school. But in order to do that, I had to go to mom and dad and be like, "Can I have $20 for the ticket?" And then could I have $20 to buy some energy drinks or some merch at the Warped Tour, right?
Yeah.
But now it's like we've got adult money and we're spending that to fly to Vegas and go and see all of those bands that we would have seen at Warped Tour 15 years ago. So I think there's a very good valid point in that sense of like, oh, okay, the kids that were at Warped Tour back then, like if they were old enough, they had part-time jobs, or they were asking mom and dad for $40 to go to Warped Tour.
Right. Yeah, correct. Yeah, you're right.
What is the biggest difference though that you've noticed as a band when it comes to reception of fans between then and now?
To me, you are who you always were, truly. You know what I mean? Like your demeanor then would be still the demeanor now. If anything, people get older and wiser, not like older and more like up their own butts. Like if you were already up your own butt, then you probably still out, right? So
you probably just went up further.
Right.
But I mean, like in terms of like fans, like the way that fans are receiving Anberlin when they're coming out to shows, when they're buying records, do you find that it is larger now than it was then? Do you find that it's kind of matured more? Like what's the big difference that you found your fan base to kind of grown into over the years?
I think it's just like we were talking about, getting older, changing with the band as we've changed, because we haven't written that record that we wrote, back in 2005 again, and we never will. And it's just kind of accepting bands for that. You never stop playing those songs, but we'll never try to recreate that truly. You know what I mean? So I think it's just been like, I haven't noticed like a major change in our fan base. If anything, a lot of my experiences are meeting fans that are older going, I did introduce my kids to your band and now they're at your show, which is a really crazy thing to hear, or talking to a fan and being like that, having the question of like, you're telling them that, yeah, we started in 2002. And they were like, that's when I was born. I'm like, that's crazy.
It's weird being in the workforce and someone saying that they were born in the year 2000, and it's like, no. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm trying to get math. I'm like, what? Oh, wait, you're right. Wait, yeah, it's just like it flies by. If anything, it gives me gratitude to still be here, to be honest. You know what I mean? I don't know that when we started that we would have thought that we would have lasted more than 5 years. So let alone 20 years and like 9 records is like such an amazing accomplishment. So I think gratitude's the feeling we feel more than anything every day, truly.
And 20 years is a huge accomplishment. And of course, still making music. A few weeks ago, you released Vega. But over the last 10 years, you've been through a lot, from the hiatus to a singer change, now to new music. With all of that change, what has stayed the same?
I think because there has been a lot of change, but that it's all been decisions made by a group of friends. And we are still friends. All these decisions were made as a group. 2014 breaking up. That conversation had been had the year before. It's probably halfway through the year as a band, that sitting down and someone saying, "Hey, I really feel like I need to get off the road for these reasons," and other people chiming in, kind of second and thirding that. And we've always kind of been very democratic in how we do things, and it's kind of like majority rules, right? Like no one person could be like, "Well, I don't want to do that," and so you're not going to do it, right? So, and then reforming was a band decision, reaching back out in like 2018, just being like, "Yo, I miss you dudes. Like, can anybody think of any good reason why we shouldn't start, thinking about playing shows again? What would that look like? What would that feel like?" To creating new music. When we reformed, that wasn't really on our radar. It wasn't really something we were trying to do. And then COVID hit, and we as a collective we just had a lot of time on our hands. So we collectively said, "Hey, let's start jamming." And because I converted my garage into a recording studio / where we would rehearse. So everyone would be like, "Let's start writing some songs in Christian's garage," right? To COVID happening and like live streams, and Steven kind of coming to us saying, "Hey, I haven't been able to tour much because of commitments at home. And would you guys consider touring with another singer?" I think that was a really big thing of him to do, because I think if he would have just presented it to us as, "Hey, I can't tour anymore for the foreseeable future, but if you guys want to find someone to tour, God bless you, go do it." But he actually brought someone to the plate. So I don't know that we would have collectively been able to like agree on who we would, who that would have been. It was kind of Steven, the one that we'd all known Maddie, but Steven knew him maybe a little better and was the one that initially reached out and kind of put that on our plate. I don't know if that wasn't set on our plate that we ever would have put anything on our plate. We might have just been like, it's not going to work. Right. So I think that's the thing that hasn't changed. It's just like we all kind of lean on each other. I look at these dudes as brothers and family, and I would do anything for them. And I feel the same love and support from them. So it's just kind of it's easy to navigate all the change when you really truly feel like you have a team of people that you can trust and support you, and all that stuff that comes along with it.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of mutual trust and respect going on in the band based off of everything you said.
Yeah, 100%. In order for this to work moving forward, I kind of said to some of the dudes, like, you're going to need to probably stop working your jobs, because we need to be able to like say yes to stuff. We can't say, that's the whole point that's what's been killing our business, is just being all these constraints from every individual. It wasn't just Steven. Steven had his own, then they were a lot, but other guys, if it was hard to get everyone's calendars to align. So that's a big risk to take, and that's a lot of trust to put, if I say, "Trust me, I think this is going to work." I'm like, we're talking about looking around. It's really working. I think the only thing that's been holding us back from joining in on this like freaking emo party that's happening is that we haven't just been able to say yes and go on tours the past couple of years. So that's the reason why we're touring this much this year, was just kind of, this was a good vehicle for us to get back out on people's radars and kind of in people's view, because we've just been at home for the past couple of years. Truly, you might not. Everyone, I think, was sitting around us going like, "I wonder what Anberlin's plan is. What are they trying to do? Like just sit home and record records." We'd only really played 8 shows last year, which is not sustainable. So, 3 months of touring straight is also not sustainable. So we'll find a better balance next year. But this kind of happened to be the vehicle to launch this whole new era of the band.
It kind of sounds like you're excited for this new era based off of everything, and you're just kind of diving in deep and, figuring it out as it comes along. Or do you have a plan?
Yeah, this has been, in works for, Steven probably called me at the beginning of last year in the first quarter of the year to have a conversation like, hey, I can't really tour much moving forward. So would you consider touring with Maddie? And that kind of set in motion a lot of more conversations of, okay, how would that look? And, a lot of doubts being assuaged by more conversations as groups and with Maddie and truly sorting it out and dialing in a plan and, you know, being laser sighted on where we wanted to go and how we wanted to get there. And it's, not to sound cheesy, but like the years before this, there was no game plan and there was no goal. Like we couldn't set goals because people couldn't commit to stuff. Right. So it was like, I kept saying was like, how do we know if we're succeeding or failing if we don't even know what our goals are? If you're not achieving your goals, then what are you judging your success on? So, it was nice to go into this whole new era with a lot of goals and things in motion of like, how can we tie all these new things together with this, this new singer is a big change. That's not it's no small feat for bands to like. It could be like if I dropped out of the band, they got another guitar player, no one would blink an eye. To tell you the truth, and that doesn't hurt my feelings. But lead singers are way different, right? Those are the guys that wrote the lyrics. They're the ones that people hear singing to them and speaking them out of depression and all of these things. They're the ones talking directly to them. So I understand the connection people have with singers. And we understood like the feat of what it was going to be to introduce someone new and truly kind of get people on board with it. But I knew if we weren't excited about it and we didn't have like a truly like bulletproof plan that it wouldn't work. Right. So we truly like worked very hard on like truly trying to dial in every aspect of bringing Maddie in, recording new songs with them, the whole new record and the touring and every aspect of what you're seeing right now. It's been a lot of work and a lot of time and thought put into it.
Yeah, it sounds like he came to the band with a problem and a solution instead of just a problem, and that you guys embraced it and rolled with the punches. But what was the initial vibe between you and the other guys in the band when he came to you with that, saying, "Hey, like, you know, I, I've got this problem and I've got this solution for you." I can imagine it's hard to embrace something like that immediately at first, at face value.
No, you're right for sure. I think my initial, and I didn't say this to because I then, Steven called me. I was at work, and when I left work, I called everyone individually to let them know. But I didn't really tell them what I thought, but the general consensus, which I agreed with, was like, well, I guess we're done again. Right. Because I think it wasn't necessarily whether Maddie could do it or not or cut it. I think I and everyone else was looking at like what I just said of the amount of work that it was going to take to kind of facilitate that transition and looking around and being like, well, everyone's in jobs and like that's going to take a lot of time for someone to like put, So I actually like, and then I thought about it more and I said, hey guys, let's get dinner. I think I have a pretty good plan here. And I think this is why I think it can work. And it just kept growing from there. And the excitement kind of built. And I like, luckily my boss is like, gives me a very long leash because he really loves the fact that I'm in a band. So I can kind of work and not work. I do construction. So I can do that whenever I want. And I just told him, hey man, I think I'm going to need to step away for a bit because I need to kind of like, someone's got to be, at the wheel. Right. So yeah, I think it was just like, it was a slow, but it did start as a very somber emotion. I think when we first discussed it was like, oh boy, I don't know how that's going to work. And it's hard to find a lot of examples that do work, but there are examples out there. You know what I mean? Seosin comes to mind for sure. Like I love their self-awareness because even on their Instagram it says like member fluid since 2001 or something like that. Constantly switching members out and different singers and that kind of stuff. So it's not impossible. Blink 182 did it. Everyone has their opinions on whatever versions of bands, and I understand. I mean, Van Halen did it for hex, but yeah, it grew into like excitement from kind of like, it was a true 180, I think, over like the course of about a year.
So with this new album and getting adjusted to everything as well, what was the most exciting part about putting together Vega?
Vega is that we released 2 EPs over the previous 2 years. And Vega was basically just those EPs combined, and then the track order reordered with 2 new songs. And that was always kind of the plan we landed on with Equal Vision. So like I said, when we got the band back together, we hadn't really planned on writing new music, and COVID kind of forced our hand there. And so we we recorded the first EP, Silverline, on our own, like in my garage, and then Tim from Under Oath and our buddy JJ have a studio in Tampa. So we were going between those two spots, and we did that ourselves, and then shopped it around and found Equal Vision as the home. And they kind of like this idea of a slow drip. It's not, maybe not, it doesn't work for everyone, but for our case, and at that time, since people couldn't tour, we watched artists release records during COVID and then just like totally flop, right? I can't remember who else did that at the time. So I felt like it was, people's minds were other places at that moment. So the plan had always been, let's record a couple EPs, combine them with some new songs, release that as a full length, because it gives the band a longer runway and more things to talk about over a long period of time, rather than just like, you shoot your shot, you release a record. It's a very ADD culture nowadays that people are on to the next thing in a second. So people might consume that over the course of a week and then move on, and then you're silent until you do another record, right? Or you release another single or whatever. This just kind of prolongs that process, and allows you to be like, here's a couple singles, here's an EP, here's another, next year here's a couple more singles, here's an EP, following year here's an album, here's some new singles. So you've got a 3-year cycle there, as opposed to like a 1-week cycle when you just spent a year recording the record and people were done with it in about a week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've kind of talked a little bit about the touring and the new album, and you're mid this big tour, and you've got all these songs, this slow drip, all of the changes that have kind of happened. With all of that being said, on this tour, what's the most exciting thing for you with all the changes that you're halfway through this big long tour? What's been the most exciting part of all of it? Like, the new music, the performing live, all of it. What's been your favorite part of doing it all?
I think it's been, and I've mentioned it a few times, just about how long the process has been and how long we knew that the band was doing this new thing with Maddie, and the amount of time and planning that went into all of that, all the things we just covered, all those things you just mentioned, those all culminated at the beginning of this tour. So Vega came out. We released the first single with Maddie, so we first single with Maddie was literally like the first week of the tour. And then we were playing shows with Maddie, and every night, I'm talking to fans after the show, just being like, what do you think? And people would be like, I came in very skeptical, but you guys just crushed it. And, I'd gladly come back. So it was just this very validating, vindicating thing of like finally putting these things in motion that you've been working so hard on and you truly believed in. And there was all these like, everyone's got an opinion and a comment online, and most of the time people are commenting on things that were just hypotheticals, right? We hadn't even done anything yet. They hadn't heard anything yet. People were just like, this is going to blow. Like, you can't do that. You guys should just quit Anberlin, start a new band. I'm like, just give me a second. Can we just can you come see it? And can we put it out there and listen to it before you judge it? Right. So finally we got to do all that. And, that's what this whole tour, I think that's been the best thing. It's just kind of like this culmination of all the hard work and all the planning, and truly like pulling this thing out of the grave and like resuscitating it, because the band was on freaking life support truly the past couple of years, and, changing the culture of the band, changing the mindset, and being like, no, I don't, because I've said this in other interviews, and we already did it once. We already broke up one time. And I truly felt strongly that if we did it again, there was no coming back from that, at least not for myself. Like, I don't know that I could live with myself doing that to fans, it'd be like, we're broken up. No, we're not. It's like snip, snap, snip, snap, or whatever the office quote. But, so I think that's why this time around, I was like, I fought for it a little harder, because in 2014, it was just kind of like everyone was speculating what life would be like on the other side of being in a band, because it's all we'd ever done, right? Everyone had been doing it since we were teenagers. And then I knew what it was, and I knew how much I really enjoyed being in a band and how important it was to me and how fulfilling it was, and I think that's what's been so important about all of this, was just truly like having something and truly holding very tight to it and truly fighting for it. And I think, when people ask me for advice about the music industry, I always lead with like perseverance is going to get you farther than anything, truly. And I'm not saying be irresponsible, but you can find a million examples of actors or any artists or that truly fought through the down times when it was mostly down, like becoming an actor is not an easy feat. Most of those dudes are basically working jobs, starving, just going to auditions, trying so hard, and maybe it never pans out. Or, J.K. Rowling's not the best example, but, she had been denied by like 14 publishers before someone picked up, Harry Potter. So that's a really good example of like people couldn't see the art for what it was, but like she didn't get defeated by that. And I get very inspired by those stories because that's the music industry in general. It's very rare that bands just start and then just rocket to success. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of like difficulties and hurdles to get over. So I think that's, truly, just to get back to your question, that's been the best part of this tour, was just kind of seeing works in motion and seeing the change in opinion. It's like a sea change, right, in your whole business, and seeing reactions from fans. It's just been great.
We've talked a lot about what's been going on, and I know you have a lot going on right now, and it feels like, I'm sure so much of it is so new, with the new album, with the new tour, all of that. With all of these changes and all of this that you're kind of going through, is there anything that you're really excited for future wise?
Things were being planned long before it even like rose to the public knowledge, right? So we're already steps further away from Vega. We've got tons of songs in the clip already finished, and we're, my mind is already into next year. We don't really have much more touring this year outside of the rest of this tour and When We Are Young. There might be a couple flyouts over in the winter, but my mind's already kind of turning towards next year and the special things we're going to try to do there. And just keep on keeping on and rolling with the momentum. I feel like we've kind of shifted out of reverse into a forward momentum. So
I love that you're getting that forward momentum. Is there anything that you maybe have in mind for next year that you can talk about?
Yeah, of course. So next year is 2025 will be the 20-year anniversary of Never Take Friendship Personal. So we'll obviously we are in talks of setting up an anniversary tour around that, maybe doing some, special pressings. And, I don't want to give everything away, but just keep on doing the thing, and I'm going to keep fighting for it for as long as, people are listening and coming out. So
I absolutely love that. And I look forward to that so much. One thing we love to do on this podcast towards the end of each episode, because we know how important it is to, grow in the scene and help others grow as well, is there another band that you have or artist that you have right now that's been on repeat? Who are you listening to that you believe deserves more recognition or a shout out?
Steven came out the other day. He had filled in for a couple shows. We like to splash the pot here and there with him. I think it's kind of fun, but he was listening to an artist backstage and I was like, who the heck is this? And I can't remember. It was just like a kind of poppy shoegaze band. So I'm just going to blow it. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I got some boys in like Ohio that do pretty brutal, hardcore, Disobedient Crew. I'll give them a shout out. Our producer, or engineer we work for a ton. He's actually out with us right now. He's doing like playback mind monitors for us on tour. He just played me some songs with this guy named Rowdy. He's released some music. He used to tour with Under Oath as a tech, and he's just got this gravelly kind of country voice. And JJ played me some songs he recorded with Rowdy, and they haven't released them yet, but I can see that catching on fire for a certainty. But he's on Spotify as Rowdy. I think they're actually changing it into a band name. Man, who else have I been listening to a lot? I'm trying to think of like obscure things. I don't know.
That I think those are good. I'm really curious who that Poppy Shoegaze band is, but maybe after we're done recording, you can send me a note.
It's on the tip of my tongue. It's like 4 letters. Oh man.
All good, all good. But I really do just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Honestly, this has been a ton of fun. I'm really excited to catch you on this upcoming tour. The tour that you're is upcoming for me for where I am, but for you, it's halfway done.
Right.
But excited to catch you on tour and to catch you at When We Were Young. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, Christian.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Our Space with Matt Vettese. If you enjoyed yourself, please support the show by subscribing and leaving a review.